Well, thanks. Welcome everyone to our Community Wisdom Zoom call on Recovery Dharma. Where do I begin? My name is Steve. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm a member of this community. I volunteered to help facilitate our discussion, which is intended to be a community discussion and sharing of wisdom. As mentioned, Critter, Marion, and myself will be calling on people and fielding questions and comments from the chat room. We do not have any particular authority in this meeting. Our role is to facilitate and organize the workshop. The format of this workshop is to begin with some open-ended questions that we pulled together from the community, and then have members, yourself, take turns sharing their wisdom about any given question. Broadly, we've organized the questions into topic groups. Following the provided question and answer period, we'll open the call to anyone to ask additional questions or topics that they may have in mind. As mentioned, you may also use the chat feature at any time to ask questions or share wisdom, and we'll read aloud your question or comment as time allows. For the sake of time, we're going to ask everyone to keep their comments under 2 minutes. Critter will be keeping track of time and will let you know when you have 30 seconds by saying 30 seconds, and when your time is up by saying time. We ask that everyone practice wise speech, careful listening, and engage in the discussion in a collaborative and supportive manner. May we each strive to speak that which is true and useful, refrain from speech that harms our community, and develop conscious and clear communication. All right, with that little bit of background, let's get started with a discussion of some questions that we have grouped into the topic of how to get involved in Recovery Dharma. And so the first question that we're going to start with is framed in this sense of, where do I find a meeting, and what if there are no meetings where I live? And so the way we'll go about this, if anyone has any wisdom or an answer to that question, just feel free to raise your hand and chime in. Looks like we have Chris in Japan. Go ahead, Chris, if you can unmute yourself.
Go to the Recovery Dharma website and look on the meetings list, and there's not any meetings like within an acceptable, drive from you or what have you, then you start your own. That's what I did. So I started a meeting in Okinawa, Japan, and unfortunately it folded after I left, but I started another meeting in Misawa, Japan, because, if the fellowship's not there that I seek, then I try to create it. So that's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Thanks. And we also have Chris.
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Hi, yeah, two Chris's. So Chris from Indiana and they, them. And so to piggyback on what Chris was saying, going to the website, if you're looking for online meetings, there's a big banner up top, but also in the same vein, if you want to start an online meeting or any kind of meeting, really just need to click on there's another tab there for start a meeting, and you register. One of the little tricky things about online meetings is that if you want to find a meeting that's not RDO, then there's not really instructions. It's a little bit tricky. You go to click on everywhere, and then you click on video conference, and then you'll see all of the video meetings. So so that's a little extra tip. So.
Great. Does anyone else want to share on this particular topic, question? If not, that's okay. I think that gives us a good answer there, and we do have quite a long list of questions, so we can keep moving forward. Next question is kind of related to the same topic, is people often ask, what should I expect when attending a first meeting? Well, I'll piggyback on that and also share, I facilitate a few meetings in Salt Lake and manage a website here, and I get a lot of questions from people who are interested in coming to a meeting for a first time, and I often sense the anxiety portion of like what to expect, and so I just reassure people, outside of just what Critter went through, the actual format of the meeting, I also try to reassure them that it's a very calm and safe environment, and that it's very welcoming, and most people who come for the first time, that's their primary comment afterwards, that I was really nervous about coming, but at the end I felt like this was just such a calming and peaceful environment. So I always try to highlight that it is that type of environment that's welcoming and peaceful as well.
Yeah, I'm just gonna echo what Steve said. This is Dirk. And then Johanna also has a hand raised. But to go beyond kind of the administrative stuff of, there'll be a meditation and maybe some speaker sharing and reading. One thing I've found consistent at every Recovery Dharma meeting that I've been to is a lack of judgment and a lot of support. And I found that at least a refreshing change from some of the other programs that I've been involved in the past. So yeah, Johanna had her hand up.
Thank you. Thanks all for being here. Can you hear me okay? I'm using a headset I don't usually use. Okay, good. Yeah, I would, from the reassurance angle, also mention that no one ever has to share what their reason is for being there, because I know when I first started going to recovery meetings, one of my kids asked me if I had to say the thing, and I like that in Recovery Dharma, nobody has to say the thing, or identify themselves by anything other than their name. And we could also direct people to the book. The sample meeting outline is right in the lovely free to download book. So it's another place to get a general idea of what a meeting might look like.
Great. B, you have your hand up? I'm sorry, B, I can't unmute you. I'll
Sorry,
unmute yourself.
Talking. I also like to tell people that we're open to addictions of all kinds, including process addictions.
Great. And Steve, you have your hand up?
Yes. Here in Phoenix, I'm Steve. I'm in Phoenix. One thing that I really like here is we don't get bombarded. We feel like we have to do things until we feel comfortable. So, I'm not gonna have to talk to a bunch of people I don't know until I feel comfortable. So on. I don't have to do this. I don't have to do that. That's a really wonderful thing. I can sort of just go and participate as much or as little as I would like to.
Great. Well, thanks. Moving on to our next question in this topic, kind of a follow on. People ask, how do I make connections to friends, community, wise friends, or a mentor? Anyone? Go ahead, Chris.
Michael has a hand up.
Yeah, Mike.
This is Michael from Portland and chair of the Life Friendships Committee. And actually, that's a really good question. We're putting together a workshop for the end of March. And one of the things is we've really found that the whole idea of mentorship, even in refuge recovery, did not take off. And so we're really asking that question. And I think we're moving more and more towards small groups within the groups, inquiry groups, process addiction groups, maybe only 3 or 4 people in the various meetings and so forth. But we're actually going to, at the workshop, explore, what do you guys think about models? How do you want to get connected, and so forth. So I think there's a lot of questions about this issue because it hasn't taken off in a lot of places in previous times.
Thanks, Critter. Oh,
There you go.
thank you. Am I good? Okay. So one of the guys in the program introduced me to the concept of spiritual friends, which was equals sharing in a safe, nurturing space. And that has worked really slightly different than wise friends in that, you know, in my case, you get down to the nitty gritty. You're really working deeply and personally with another person, and that person is working the same way with you. And it's actually proven to be transformational. I'm just going to say that straight out. There's one thing, there are different levels that I work with people. When I work with wise friends, I work on a certain level, but that spiritual friendship thing is a whole nother level of trust, where I'm letting out some of my deepest and most vulnerable things to another human being. And I'm telling you, all of a sudden it's that Carl Jung thing, what doesn't come to light becomes my destiny. Well, things that I normally would never let to light come out, and my initial response was always this terror that I would be judged, and finding that I'm not judged in this safe space has really made the difference in my recovery. Thank you.
Okay. One of the things that I found was that the whole old idea that the phone weighs 1,000 pounds or something, and I always said that it was an electric shock for me. But some of the things that are more accessible for me these days is with technology is texting. And so one of the things that I started was this texting practice where I make sure I get contact information at a meeting. So the first part is going to a meeting. But the second part is then just texting people just to say hello. And that makes it a lot lighter, and people seem to enjoy, and I know I enjoy receiving the text and just to say hi, but also to say, maybe this is an issue and this is a solution, and then I kind of gradually step it up. That kind of leads me into phone calls, and then that leads me into small groups, and that leads me into a spiritual friendship. So for me, using the old practice of outreach, but making it lighter and not having an expectation. So I don't have an expectation that I'm gonna reach people. I just have an expectation I'm gonna send 1 to 3 texts every day. And that way I can celebrate it and I can feel good about it. and then it ends up starting to have results, and I start building friendships.
Mike and Tanya, and then B also have their hands raised.
Hi, I'm B. We've got, in one of my meetings, we've started a gratitude text thread. People who are interested in doing that can make it known that they want to be part of it. So every morning we start sending out our gratitudes for the morning, and that can lead into a closer connection with people when you come into the meeting. And the other thing we do is ask at the end of the meeting during the announcement period, anyone who's willing to speak with a newcomer or someone who is maybe a little less sure of themselves, who's been around for a while, raise your hands, and then you have people who with a little more time who are available to talk.
Go ahead. Yes,
Oh.
okay.
Hey guys, I'm Mike. I chair a meeting in the St. Louis area, and we also encourage, the wise friends and mentors, and promote the sangha. We have a call list and as well, and put the word out. Kind of raise hands as to who's willing to talk to newcomers at each meeting. I wonder if there's a format. Is that something that's going to grow within the book? Is the Recovery Dharma book as a resource going to grow and possibly come up with a format for mentoring and reaching out, as far as inventories and what process or protocol would be useful as a whole for the whole community.
Hi, I was wondering, whenever you do introduce yourself, is it common, even in a local Sangha, to say, "Hi, my name is," and just say that every single time that you do talk? It's something that you might already know, but is it just like locally, like in local situations, does it happen? Does that make sense?
Yeah, just in terms of kind of establishing some familiarity with one another.
Well, yeah, with the same groups that's there each time as well. Correct.
Yeah, and I think a few of the people in the chat have hinted at this too. I think just also, getting to know each other through showing up a little bit early, staying a little bit after, so that you chat with people. That's what I did as well, even though it's kind of uncomfortable at first. But that's how I moved into meeting someone that I knew well enough to ask to develop a kind of a texting wise friendship, is by doing that. All right. And in order to stay on time, since we do have a lot of questions, we'll move on to the next one. And hopefully these next two in this topic can go pretty quickly. I think they're fairly straightforward. I'm biasing everyone right off the bat. But so the next one is asking, is there any advice on involvement in other recovery meetings, for example, AA or 12-step recovery? Advice about, the pros and cons, should I continue to do this? Is that okay? Type of thing.
Yeah, I think we have it in every meeting format where the facilitator says near the beginning of the meeting that you're more than welcome to combine this program with other programs. So no worries there.
Hi, Steve from Phoenix. Back in August, I started an outreach meeting at a treatment facility for the residents, and I liked that so much, I started another one. And most recently started another one that's actually an open meeting at another treatment facility. And one thing did for the practice with under meetings, after encourage going to meetings as often as possible, especially early in recovery, added a sentence saying, this includes 12-step, SMART, or sobriety, etc., whatever seems to work for you. And then in the closed meetings at the treatment facility, the one that I'm still facilitating, that question comes up all the time where, well, what about this? What about this? And I try and direct it to how can we correlate what we're doing here where this can help you with that program if that's the way you're going. Trying to find the parallels and just being generally encouraging. That's about all I have.
Great. So we have Joshua has his hand up, and then we'll move on to the next question.
I just wanted to chime in and kind of give something that I've got from a lot of meetings, which is take what works for you and leave the rest. If there's something good at a meeting, then we definitely shouldn't feel like just because we're part of another meeting, we shouldn't still participate in others, because basically we're all here for the same reason, and that's to remain sober or away from our process addiction, and trying to find the best way possible to lead quote unquote normal life without the excesses our human, of our humanity. And I think a lot of things can be enjoyed in moderation, and for me, a lot of things can't be in moderation at all. So that's why I attend these meetings, and I really appreciate you guys being here.
Great.
That's all.
Great, thanks. I saw some similar themes in the chat as well about us remaining open to other meetings and whatever helps our folks. So let's move on to the next topic group, which is about establishing a recovery or Buddhist practice and some of the ways that we can do that. And the first question there is, do you have any suggestions for creating structure for my personal recovery program?
Good question.
Go ahead, Chris in Japan.
Yeah. Thanks for calling on me. Excuse me. I know for me, it all started with daily meditation practice. A minute, 2 minutes, or 5 minutes. It was that I had an established practice where I like ritual. So I like to get up in the morning and do this and then do this and do this. And then part of that, doing that, of just putting it into my day, was to put in a meditation practice in the morning, and then gradually move to a meditation practice at night as well. And then just not get overwhelmed with the amount of stuff out there. Because when you're getting, it's been my experience that once I got into really getting into Buddhism and trying to learn more about it, that there was just so much stuff. It was as I joke, it's like list and list and list for as far as the eye can see. Buddhism has a list. So for me, I just had to keep in mind the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, and that's cool is that we can start with wise concentration and wise meditation, because it's not a wise mindfulness. Excuse me. It's not a linear path. I don't have to start at the First Noble Truth and not until I get to the end of the Eightfold Path. So thank you for allowing me to share.
Thanks. Next we have Chris.
Hi, I'm Chris in Indiana, and similar to that, when on days when I am trying to still struggle with having that daily meditation practice, what I can do is listen to either read the book or listen to the audio book. And kind of what I tend to do is spend a week with each section, and just kind of listening to it on repeat while I'm commuting to and from work, and making the phone calls to the friends. So for me, the reading that we have called the practice from the book actually is my structure. That those are the things that I do is from that reading. And so it's funny. We were here a few months before it occurred to me that was actually the structure of the practice. That was one suggestion for it. So that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, Ryan, Chris.
Hello. Thank you. It's interesting because I totally forgot about this meeting tonight and last night after the meeting or during the meeting in the rooms recovery. There was a few newcomers or a few new people that were asking these very questions about not only about this program, but how to establish meditation practice and how to establish the Buddhist practice. And I totally forgot about this meeting. I wish I would have remembered. I would have mentioned it to them. It would have been helpful. But going back to what, and I apologize, I don't remember the question was about establishing a meditation practice or a Buddhist practice, because to echo what was said earlier, I first started dabbling in Buddhism 10 years ago, and it was not until recently where everything started clicking. And I think the reason why it started clicking was because I actually just started studying Buddhism, started finding resources that were helpful to me, like books, for instance, very basic Buddhist books, that break down very specific topics and websites. And I'm taking a course right now that's pretty hardcore course on Buddhism online, and that's been really helpful. So there are so many resources out there, and I don't recall. I think Chris did a pretty good job on that Friends Act webpage of putting some of those courses on there. And thank you. And I know that at some point, I hope to contribute myself because I'm really good at finding basic stuff. But the one thing I wanted to jump on was, and I know that's not always possible, but for people to try to look for either a meditation or a Buddhist community in their community, face to face, because I found that to be very helpful. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Thanks. Next, I think Joe from the Bronx.
Yeah, this is Joe from the Bronx. I'm just going to say that when I came into this community, I knew next to nothing about Buddhism. And Chris here from Indiana pushed that texting people practice on me. And what I found was that different people began to share their practices. Of course, I learned some stuff in the meetings. And one of the most interesting ones was they have these WhatsApp groups. And I was talking to someone in the Netherlands who shared a meditation with me, who actually got it from someone who was mentoring me. So, and that became this meditation that I do. It's over an hour long. I do it almost every day. And then I became interested in what this guy's practice was. And then, so I'm sharing my practices with the people I'm texting and I'm in contact with, and they're sharing what works for them. And I got to tell you, and then the Dharma talks, I didn't want to listen to any Dharma talks. Like, come on, aren't we doing enough here? And what I found was the Dharma talks were like linchpin in terms of how am I going to change? Like, there's the meditation, but then there's those Dharma talks. And then people started sending me Dharma talks. I couldn't even find them at the beginning. I had no clue. So it was really the connections that helped me understand and develop a Buddhist practice. For me, I think the foundational practice is connection. Thank you.
Great. We'll take one more and then we'll move on to a very similar question. So if you don't get a chance to talk about this specific aspect, we'll have a kind of related follow-on question. I think Ray was next.
Yeah, thank you very much. So just very briefly, anybody who is interested in joining a group, just a quick search for Recovery Dharma on Facebook will give you about 6 to 8 different groups that are currently active to choose from. Some of those groups are actually having a structured week-by-week plan where they're actually working the program and, you know, talking about it at the end of the week as well.
Great. And then it looks like in the chat, people mentioned a few different Dharma talks where you can get them, dharmacy.org, meditation, or Insight Timer, and other apps like that as well. So the next question, I don't know if we have a lot to add, but it's basically was asked in a slightly different way. How do I integrate recovery principles into my daily life? Specifically, any suggestions for other daily practices? So they were asking about non-meditation practices. So I think we've highlighted on some of those. Does anybody else have anything else they want to add there? Or else we can move on to the next one.
I found it, I mentioned the gratitude list at the beginning of the morning. I find that really helpful. And I set my intentions each morning. I've actually spent some time figuring out what my vows are, what kind of life do I want to live, what's the vow-powered life. There's actually a book called The Vow-Powered Life that I've worked through so that every morning I can set my intention for the day. And sometimes I need different things. I need to concentrate on wise communication, for example, wise speech, right understanding. And I've just found starting my day that way. And then at the end of the day, I take a look and say to myself, okay, how did I do? Not to be critical of myself, but just kind of to, you know, just to integrate it and to put it together for the day.
Great. So the next question is kind of a couple questions, all similar, related. People ask, what if I can't meditate? What advice do you have for beginning meditator, or if I have trouble meditating on my own?
In stereo. That was cool. Hey, it's Dirk. So, yeah, just to tag on to what Critter said, when I early in sobriety, when I got out of rehab, I knew I wanted to start meditating and practicing and studying Buddhism, but I didn't know where to begin at all. And I found that sitting in silence was really uncomfortable and stressful, a lot of anxiety. So I know these things, are addictive, can be as much as anything else, but I downloaded some apps that had like beginner courses in meditation. And so I started with guided meditation, and they were a couple minutes long. And then I found that as time went on, I became more comfortable sitting in silence. And now the idea of guided meditation seems kind of foreign to me in my personal practice, although we do meetings. But that's how I got started, was, it was kind of like somebody helping me along, but they were virtual. So thanks.
Okay, next, Ray.
Hey, thank you very much for calling on me. Sometimes I actually sit with a scripted meditation and I read it out loud. It helps me to focus on the present moment, and I may take it one sentence at a time and just sit with that one sentence so that I at least have something in front of me that I'm reading from, and taking that specific scripted guided meditation one sentence at a time for however long it takes me. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi. So I wanted to just address the embodied practices, because just to take a step back from all the great practices that we do, I think that especially coming in new, that the idea that we want to be empowered because we're feeling powerless, and the idea that when we're in contact with our internal states other than just thinking, and we get a better relationship with our thinking, and we're aware of our breath and our other parts, that enables us to become empowered, and especially the relationship with the thoughts. So I just, from a stepping back point of view, for somebody especially new coming into here, to see why are we doing all these practices? Like, I'm coming in with an addiction and I want to get out of it, just to have some kind of perspective that there's a reason for these embodied practices, and that when we have a greater sense of our own entirety, that in our felt sense, that we are able to then have a lot more power than we thought we could.
Great, thanks. Thanks for that. And Michael, you made it down to you.
Thank you. So one of the experiences that we've had in some meetings where a lot of new people come in from treatment is a lot of them have not experienced meditation in the same way that we do it in the meetings. And yet so much of what they say is, wow, this meditation stuff is really great. I love doing it. This is the first time I've done it for 20 minutes. And because of the interest and the questions, we did a workshop at the beginning of February that was very well attended, mostly newcomers. And the workshop was just to give people experience of different kinds of meditation, as well as doing some insight dialogue, small groups of 4, where they began to ask questions and talk about their experience and what they thought they needed. And basically what we did was a basic breath meditation, a metta meditation, and each one was introduced by somebody that had experience with that walking meditation. And then one of the ones that really took off for people was the one from the book, which was the working with difficult emotions. And again, experienced people led them. One of the things that most of them had never experienced before, and it really took off for them, was walking meditation. And we taught it pretty much in the Theravada's direction. So anyway, giving people, I guess for beginners, again, giving people experience at actually spending some time. This was only about a half day, but even that much more was really encouraging for people. Thank you.
Great. Okay, let's move to the next question. Next question is, any advice on working the inquiries or using the Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path as part of your practice? Joanna, you're Boston.
Hi, thanks. We just started an inquiry group, so I don't have a whole lot of wisdom to offer. I know other people have been at it longer, but we my Saturday morning in-person meeting, we went from just the most chill church ever. The same people who, when I said, can we stick around for an extra hour for tea, were like, yeah, no problem. We said, so can we show up an hour early to do inquiries? And they were like, yeah, no problem. So we, at this point, have not posted it because we're all just kind of dipping a toe into the inquiries and they're pretty heavy. So it's mainly just people who come to that meeting. I mean, it is open, but like I said, we're not posting it yet, just to help it feel a little more safe for starters. And we haven't worked all the kinks out yet on because yeah, I mean, just the first question, really, we could probably spend a couple of months on. So, but that's one idea that someone might find helpful. Thanks.
Next, Michael.
In Portland, a couple of things have happened with inquiries. At one point, there was a meeting, and I think some others use this too, where the actual format of the meeting is just to propose one inquiry question as the topic for that meeting. And just after meditation, the question is read, and then people can speak on that or whatever they would like. So again, it gives people a beginning exploration into what it's like to talk about this kind of stuff in community. And a couple of other meetings, maybe actually 3 or 4 meetings, actually spend one meeting a month where they just have the meditation and then 15 or 20 minutes of writing and then sharing. And people can pick their own question, or they can just start with, if they haven't, they can they can start wherever they want. And in one meeting, there was people that one person in particular that will remain nameless, used to take newcomers downstairs and tell tell them that, begin to discuss with them what writing inquiries was about. And so that was also really helpful. Thank you.
Great. And B?
There's here in Portland, we started an Eightfold Path study group where the topic is one of the folds from the path from the new book. And that'll be the topic of discussion for the evening.
Okay. And Marion?
Yeah, hi everybody. I just also wanted to put out there that I like doing the idea of the group inquiries, but I also find it very helpful to have one confidant I can really dig deep and talk about some of my deeper issues that I might not feel comfortable in doing so in a group. And so I am very fortunate to have somebody that I can talk to and feel like to share those deeper, darker parts of myself. And so I just wanted to put that out there, that it is helpful also to find a trusted friend, or a wise spiritual friend too. So that's all I wanted to put out there. And the way I found it, it didn't come overnight, you know. I mean, it took time to build that relationship. So to build that trust, because I'm not an easy person to trust my intimate details of my life with. So.
Great. All right, so moving on to the next question. Is it necessary to embrace Buddhist teachings or become a Buddhist to benefit from Recovery Dharma? Okay, so we'll move to Charlie C. I also saw in the chat somebody said Buddhist inspired but not required. So hopefully that doesn't steal your thunder.
Hi, folks. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay, my name's Charlie. I'm an addict. I'm new to recovery. I'm 75 days sober. And in order to answer the question about do you have to be a Buddhist in order or to take benefit from the Recovery Dharma path, I would say no. I think that community is really what I'm seeing as a personal thing, and I'm currently in a treatment facility in Salt Lake City. I'm seeing that community really works for folks. Just knowing, going to meetings, whether that's AA, HA, CA, Refuge Recovery, Recovery Dharma, smart meetings, anything that you can find, and just putting yourself out there, being vulnerable with yourself, and allowing other people to be vulnerable with you is really an important part to starting this recovery process. Forming that fellowship with people that you jive with. You don't have to be a Buddhist. You don't have to be a Christian. You know, the big book says a God of your understanding. I don't know if my God is a him, a her, a they, a them. I like to joke around and pull in some Game of Thrones speech and say, you know, the old gods and the new, and really just connecting with people from any walk of life.
30 seconds.
I don't really have much more to say other than I'm very excited to have found the Recovery Dharma community. I'll be at the conference at the end of July. I'd love to volunteer my time, and I have reached out through the mailing list, and I hope to see most of you there. Thanks.
Awesome. B, I'm not sure if your hand's still up from before or if this is a new. If not, go ahead.
Now I know. Okay, I got to go back because now I don't remember what I was going to say. No, I don't. So never mind.
Okay. Ryan, Chris.
Okay, can you hear me now? I apologize.
Yep.
Can you repeat that question? That very last one?
It was just asking if it's required to be a Buddhist to participate in the program, basically.
Okay, yeah, this is a question that I myself had gotten into some trouble. I don't know how much you all heard, but anyway, I got into trouble at some point a long time ago when this organization was the other organization, and somebody posted a question on Facebook as to whether or not you know, you needed to be a Buddhist and or meditate to be involved in the program. And my response was, yeah, because and in fairness, I mean, this is kind of what separates this program from just about every other program out there. And I understand the confusion because even in the Recovery Dharma book, one part of it states that this is a program based on Buddhist recoveries, but then there's another part in the book that says you don't have to be a Buddhist. So I understand the confusion. To me, I don't, for my personal practice, I don't, Buddhism and recovery and meditation is all part of this program. It's a board that I don't even know why I would be involved in it if it wasn't for that. A lot of people come into this program because they have a problem with the higher power aspects of the 12 steps. And to me, thank you. To me, coming into this program and then having a problem with Buddhist principles and meditation, we wouldn't make it sense. And I think that sometimes I get a sense that there's almost apologists in this program that are afraid to say that this is a Buddhist recovery program. Anyway, that's my opinion.
Okay. B, you're back.
I'm going to go on a limb. I'm going to piggyback on Brian. I found that becoming involved with the Buddhist community, in my instance, Zen Buddhism, but there's many flavors, really solidified and deepened my recovery, because there's some things that are just really different from other programs, like uncovering your Buddha nature and finding that that you're uncovering something that's already good, rather than fixing your flaws. Renunciation, there are vows about renunciation, and I found that renunciation was much more helpful to me than the idea of one day at a time, for example, from another program. Where the rubber really hits the road with Recovery Dharma is that it is based on Buddhism, and I think that just becoming part of a Buddhist Sangha can be helpful. I understand it's not for everybody, but I did find it to be very helpful for me.
Great. So we'll take one more with Steve, and if you still have your hand raised, remember you can always type into the chat to your comments. So go ahead.
So one thing that hit me was it's so much of it's experience based. With meditation, there's for me it helped. There's studies. So I tell people maybe take some of these or try to take some of the principles here and just apply them to your life. I don't think that's necessarily being Buddhist, but the principles can apply. So if this seems to be working for you, keep doing that. I could go on with examples and examples, but really just keep doing what feels like it's working, and then something else will pop up and you can do that, but continue to keep working on the other things. So it's not really go full on Buddhist or anything. It's take some of the things that we talk about here. Like for me, it was really helpful applying these principles so I can actually do the stuff that they talked about in the CBT and REBT therapy that I took. So I'll pass. Thanks for calling on me.
Great, thanks. So 2 more questions this topic. We'll try to keep them to about 2 minutes each so we can move on to the final topic for the evening before we run out of time. Let me see where I'm at here. Lost my place. Oh, should I count my days of sobriety?
All of this stuff. I stopped. I do mark the year now that I've passed the year point. So I keep track of it, but I don't really count days anymore. I didn't find it helpful, but I know for some people they do find it helpful.
Okay, Charlie C.
Like I said, I'm still in my recovery, and for myself personally right now, I agree with Critter that counting your days of sobriety or not is a personal choice. I am a mile marker kind of guy, and I find these goalposts of collecting chips really helpful right now. I collected my 60-day 15 days ago at an HA meeting, and I was too scared to get up and talk. But I went back to that meeting last night and spoke on my 75th day. They don't make 75-day chips, so I just didn't collect another 60-day. They would have given me one if I had asked, but I don't need to. I'm not making a clock or anything. But these milestones, these markers, and just having something to remind me that I've had 75 days of really hard work and solid progress. And I'm 15 days away from 90, where I'm going to go up and speak again. I'll be in a different city by then for sober living and IOP. And it's forcing me to stand in my truth within the recovery community and have a have a positive influence, try to be a positive influence, and just open myself up. And again, there's that word vulnerability. So for me, it is important to collect the chips, but I say you do you. Nothing is required in your recovery other than what feels right to you. Keep yourself safe and calm, and good luck.
Great, thanks. I see there's a variety of hands up, but in the sake of trying to get to this last topic, we don't want to miss your comments, so please, if you want to type them in, we can gather those as part of our notes when we put this together into a facts page. So please do provide them there. Moving on to the last topic for the next 18 minutes or so. This is arranged under the title of Dealing with Issues of Early Sobriety or Relapse. And so the first question here is, what self-care recommendations do you have for the physical and emotional pain of early days, weeks of recovery, for example, sleep issues, depression, anxiety, and so on? B? You have to unmute yourself. There you go.
Actually, my hand was up from the earlier one, and I'm gonna go ahead and say that because I think it actually has to do with this as well. There are medical and psychological changes with different amounts of time, and it's really helpful to know where you are with that. And Critter will probably be able to speak more to it because there's different struggles for the phase you're in. So when you're in really early sobriety, I think there's something to be said for self-soothing, knowing that a hot shower can change your mind, knowing that it's okay to be good to yourself, knowing that a healing brain needs a lot of sleep, not doing too much. You know, after about 45 days, you start to feel really good and you're going, well, great, I'll go back to school, get a graduate degree, go back to work. I think if the longer you can spend a lot of time taking care of yourself and putting your sobriety and your recovery first, the better. And it took me like 6 months before I went back to work. I was lucky I could afford to. Not everybody can, but I think being careful to not do too much too soon is really important.
Thank you. Chris from Japan.
Yeah, thanks for calling on me. For me, is there an echo?
You're okay.
Okay, let me try this. How about now? Can you hear me now?
You're good.
Okay, so I was just going to say that I think there should be, it's very individualized, and just like from what my experience is that I have to draw a line and make sure that I know the difference between self-soothing techniques and self-care techniques, because sometimes self-soothing looks like a bowl of ice cream or binge watching Netflix or something like that. And those self-soothing techniques can very easily turn into disorders in and of themselves. So for me, like my self-care techniques look more like meditation practice, getting out into nature, connecting with people, good diet, hydration, sleep. You know, I track my sleep and I really aim for 8 hours of sleep. And and I'm making up for lost time. I did that for years. You know, I did 4 to 6 hours probably for 25 years. So just things like that. I think sometimes when we ask the question of like with people, healthcare professionals and such, of like, what are you doing for self-care? And they say, oh, I'm going shopping, or I have a glass of wine at night, or I eat ice cream, and so on and so forth. Like those things can eventually turn into disorder. So I think that's important to make that mark. But I think one of the biggest things that can be done in sobriety that's a self-care thing is just trying to make that connection as much as possible. Because, you know, if you're anything like me, you know, I tend towards isolation. You know, I joke around sometimes and say that I treat my loneliness with isolation, but that's the truth, you know? So, yeah, just trying to make that connection. And it's hard sometimes too to do that. I mean, we have a lot of ways of going about doing it, you know, as this is one right here, but still it feels, you know, kind of synthetic, and it's not. I need to be in the same room with you. I need to be eye to eye. I need to be in your presence. Thank you for allowing me to share.
Great. Okay. Looks like we can move on to the next question. What if I have a slip, a relapse, or a lapse? somewhat of an open-ended question, but I think that it was framed from the standpoint of, I'm within this program, this community, and I have one of these things. How do I move forward? Go ahead, Steve.
Hi, Steve here. First thing I would say is try not to beat yourself up. If there is a slip or even a relapse, congratulations, you've done something that somebody who's addicted to something is wired to do. So main thing is have compassion and getting back on the horse, so to speak, with whatever is working. And some of the people that I've told, along with the compassion, is keep in mind that all the other recovery does count. If you're counting the days, yeah, that's going to start over. If you're counting time, but all the stuff that was learned, it's not like that's forgotten. In fact, more can be learned from doing it. So just trying to focus on that rather than, oh my goodness, I slipped into a behavior that my brain is wired to do now. That's pretty vague, but that for me, that's one thing that somehow that's kept me from slipping. Just thinking of it that way, taking a lot of the pressure off. But I really encourage people rather than, oh gosh, we got to work harder. But anyway, with that, I'll pass. Thanks.
Thanks. Thomas?
Yeah, hi guys, I'm Thomas. I was gonna say regarding this question, relapse is sort of expected in long-term recovery and lifelong disease. And I relapsed a lot, and it didn't help me. With this being a program of non-motivation or motivators not being fear and shame, I think it's useful to identify what I was feeling before, during, and after, and being able to immediately recommit to my program in order to proceed, and also share that with someone that I trust that wouldn't judge me, in order to get back on that horse, like I said, and hopefully just get out of that shame cycle so that I could feel positive about my recovery. And none of the lessons that I learned were really lost, just because I had to reset a date. That's all.
Great, thanks. Amber? You're still muted, Amber, if you can unmute. Okay, sorry, Amber, I can't hear you yet. Chris from Indiana.
Hey, everybody. Well, my first version of this response was exactly what I've heard already. So I'll just add to that. So all of that about, this is compassion. One of the practices that's been really helpful for me is because the daily practice, that we have is just about, kind of noticing when I go away from the breath and just celebrating that I noticed and coming back, that's exactly the same framework that I use for relapse, or getting any time that I'm away from being fully aware and fully conscious. Whether it's that I've forgotten my breath or I've forgotten my recovery practice, or found myself in the middle of whatever again. And so that has been really helpful. In addition to doing those kind of compassion phrases, kind of as mantras and as repetitions, helps to cultivate that sense of compassion and kindness for myself. And then I send texts and let people do that for me, because that's usually what my friends do for me, right? Is send me the messages that I have a hard time sending myself.
Great, thanks. Ben C.
Hi, sorry, I didn't unmute myself. the one thing that I would say is that letting people know that judgment, shame, and all those negative emotions are completely, detrimental to becoming back into recovery. That only through self-love and self-compassion and reaching out to people to receive the love from others is the only way to get back into recovery. And that if you get back into recovery through shame, that you're not really setting yourself up for a good foundation. And that's what I really want to say, is that, like, that's in my experience with relapse in other programs has been that if you just shame them enough, they'll finally hit rock bottom and come around. And now that being in this program, I find the approach being, well, maybe you need some more self-love, has made a, tremendous impact on my life. So thank you.
Thanks. Great. So we have a few questions left. Not surprising, we're not able to get to all of them. I did want a little bit of time to see if others had questions that we didn't cover in our last 5 minutes here. If anyone has anything they want to ask or share as far as community wisdom on this topic of where a newcomer begins. Looks like Mike and Tanya have their hand up.
Hey, everybody. So I'm going to kind of wrap two questions into one about the growth of the program of Recovery Dharma. So if anybody has suggestions for additional meditation resources, the format that we use in our meeting is typically a 15 to 20-minute meditation, starting off with guided meditations and kind of float back and forth from beginners, breathing meditations and mindfulness of, the breath and feeling tones, and some of the old meditations that we still go back to and use, which kind of leads me into with the book. I know that Critter talked about adding some resource for mentoring, but is there any growth becoming of the book? Is that going to be written? I know it's fairly new and it's fairly small, but as far as additional resources, is that something that's going to grow? Is possible, add to it? And is there a network for facilitators? Yeah, the other one was meditation resources. So I use a lot of the old refuge recovery format meditations. And there's just a couple in the Recovery Dharma book. So we kind of branch out. I've used, and looked for some online meditations and things that fit into the time frame. It's kind of hard to find 15 to 20 minutes exactly to fit the format that we do. So we'll do a meditation and reading. But just as far as Recovery Dharma itself and recommended meditations, any kind of resources for that as well.
Yeah, so
for guided meditation.
Sure. And if Dirk were here, he would point you to the website. There are some additional meditations up there now that are not in the book. I think there's 7 total. So there's some other foundations of mindfulness up there, as well as a few other ones, difficult emotions and so on. So you might look at that if you haven't seen that. Let's see, and Chuck, you have your hand up. Chuck going once. We'll try Steve.
Steve here for meditations. There's a wonderful download on One Mind Dharma. That is a bunch of meditations. They're worded very similarly to ours. And I enjoy them because there's a lot of basic ones like breathing, counting, finger breathing, body breathing for if there's a bunch of newcomers. And and there's slight variations with some visualization ones, and it's like $5 at One Mind Dharma. I'm not trying to like plug anything. I just found that they're very helpful.
Great. Thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I see in the chat too, a few people suggested some of those recorded meditations that exist out there as well through the RD Friends Act. And let's see, B, we can take a few more, then we'll wrap it up.
You might look at, so Dave Smith, who is one of the original Against the Stream people, has a website, I think it's under Rebel Saint, and he has some really nice guided meditations and podcasts. He's the Dave in the original book of the stories at the back.
Right. Okay, we'll take Ryan, and then if you have additional comments, please type them into the chat. Thanks.
No, I was just going to reiterate that one of the questions that the other gentleman asked was if there is a network for facilitators, and I believe that there was at least a Facebook group that was just I could be wrong, but I thought there was just a Facebook group that was created just for facilitators to network. That was the question, the other question he had asked that I was looking to find out about.
Okay. Great. All right, with that, we will close since it's 8 o'clock. We are out of our time. If anybody has additional questions or wisdom to share, please feel free to contact us at rdcommunitywisdom@gmail.com. Again, the chats that you provided, we'll also look to those in this video to produce a facts page in the future. So the last call that we did on how to start a meeting, we have produced a facts page, and that will be going up shortly. And we'll do a similar thing with this, kind of coalescing everybody's wisdom here into some frequently asked questions that can go up on the website. So thank you all. And with that, I think we're out.